In what he described as his last interview, Jim Carrey sat down at the age of 61. He was prepared to speak the truth, the man who had made millions laugh. Fans of music have long felt that his frantic energy was hiding something sinister. They were correct about music. Carrey disclosed in 2025 that he had been taking Prozac since the 1980s due to what he described as persistent low-level melancholy. The shocking thing wasn't that, though. You will view all of his films differently after hearing his confessions regarding his father's music, suicide attempts, and his own breaking point. Jim Carrey was born in the tiny Ontario village of Newmarket on January 17, 1962. Growing up in a noisy, little house where hopes and money clashed every month, he was the youngest of 4 children. Percy, his father, played saxophone in a jazz band before settling for a menial $8,000 a year as an accountant at Titan Wheels in Scarborough. Kathleen, his mother, battled illness during his early years, spending more days in bed than not. Prior to Percy's forefathers' Anglicization after immigrating to Canada, the family name was Kerr. Jim saw his dad's silent disillusionment deepen within their small house. Behind a desk, Percy had the heart of a musician. Jim also realized early on that safety was not guaranteed by hard work. Jim found solace in the mirror when he turned 8. Even his siblings would pause and gaze at him as he stood there for hours, bending his music face into various forms. At the age of 10, he was so self-assured that he wrote to Carol Burnett to inform her that he was already an impressionist. A courteous form letter was returned to him, but it meant the world to him. As if to make a pledge, he taped it to his wall. Music, he couldn't help himself at school. Until the principal, music, repeatedly kicked him out, he transformed every class into a show, changing into professors and movie stars. Children dubbed him Rubber Face. And for a boy who was always struggling financially, those giggles were priceless. Then, in 1975, everything fell apart when Titan Wheels abruptly closed. At 51, Percy lost his job all of a sudden. He applied to 73 accounting businesses in Music, Ontario, but all he received were rejections. The savings quickly dried up, and whatever remaining music was devoured by Kathleen's medical expenses. In the end, Percy accepted a $4 per hour job as a janitor, cleaning toilets in a factory similar to the one where he had previously worked as an accountant. At the age of 13, Jim was observing the man he most admired mopping the floors of men who had once shook his hand. The embarrassment was profound. They lost their house within months. The Carreys lived in a yellow Volkswagen camper van located close to Lake Ontario from 1974 until 1976. While Jim and his brother John set up a tent next to it during the bitterly cold Canadian evenings, Percy and Kathleen slept inside music. They washed up in the sinks of petrol stations before school and woke up with frost on their sleeping bags. Jim occasionally warmed up stale sandwiches he found in dumpsters using the burner in the van. For 8 hours, the family cleaned floors and restrooms while working the night shift at a nearby plant, earning $32. During the day, Jim attended Aldershot High School with his clothing dirty, his thoughts numb, and half music, sleeping. His mother's condition deteriorated to the point where she was unable to walk alone by the age of 15, music. After Jim began skipping music classes, he left school at the age of 16 to work alongside his father full-time for $425, music, per hour. He spent the entire night cleaning floors, returned home at first light, got his mother out of bed, cleaned her, prepared her meals, and sat by her side, telling stories to make her laugh. He kept his sanity by telling those jokes. Although Kathleen referred to him as her little sunshine, he was actually afraid. It continued until 1980 after 2 arduous years. Then the day arrived that was a game-changer. Jim discovered his father in the bathroom, unconscious, in 1982. Percy had ingested a pill bottle. When paramedics hurried Jim to Joseph Brant Hospital at the age of 20, he was screaming into the phone for assistance. He was spared, music, by minutes. Percy later acknowledged that he had made 2 prior attempts in the years they had shared the van. Jim lived with that shock for the remainder of his life, fearing that he harbored the same darkness. It became the reason he was unable to quit working so hard. But something inside him kept telling him to try again despite all of that suffering. For his first genuine show, at the age of 15, Percy had taken him to Yuck Yuck's Comedy Club in Toronto. His mom had chosen a vibrant leisure suit made of polyester. I'm sure that's what comedians wore on television. The act was a complete failure. People hardly gave a clap. Music, despite his disappointment, Percy drove him home with a sense of calm pride. Jim discovered at that point that failing on stage meant training rather than death. On his 16th birthday, he dropped out of school altogether. In order to make ends meet, the family continued to work janitorial or industrial jobs. Jim slept in the van between shifts, dreaming about lights and clapping, while working 12-hour nights. To keep his mind active, he began sneaking in comedy practice during breaks, imitating W.C. Fields and Don Adams. He used to be a straight-A student, but now he is reclusive and furious. Comedy, however, offered him a breath of fresh air. Because of the extreme poverty, the family started to disintegrate. His siblings disperse. His father's despair deepened. His mother also developed an addiction to painkillers. Later, Jim said, "If you're high on painkillers, that's abandonment." He would sit at the dinner table and listen to her say things like, "I could go at any time," or "My brain is deteriorating at an incredible rate." These statements left a lasting impression on him. He discovered how to utilize humor as a shield to conceal suffering behind silliness. He ultimately earned $20 for a 20-inch set at a club called The Hoft when he was 17. Not much, but evidence that his gags might garner him respect. Then, in 1980, he thought he had succeeded when he tried out for Saturday Night Live. However, he was never able to meet Lorne Michaels. I don't think Lorne would like it. The producers rejected him, and he was devastated. For years, he was tormented by that rejection, but it also inspired him to start creating his own characters rather than imitating others. He has unseen pains hidden underneath his humor. At school, he had been teased for his lack of wealth and ridiculed for his music attire. He had been so desperate at times that he had harmed himself in order to feel something genuine. Years later, he discussed those incidents in a documentary that had video so unvarnished that it was kept secret for over 2 decades by the creators. His art was driven by his suffering. Every crazed look and every thrashing motion came from a boy who had figured out how to live by making other people laugh. There remained one glimmer of hope amid all the chaos. At Aldershot High School, teachers occasionally let him to perform in class rather than discipline him. He was sketching and performing John Wayne impersonation at the same time, according to one art teacher. Music. At the age of 19, he secured his first television part in Introducing Janet, a modest Canadian film that would eventually be titled Rubberface, in 1981. He portrayed Tony, a struggling comic who was almost exactly like him. Music. It provided him with a beginning, but it did not make him renowned. He took a leap that year. He departed Toronto for Los Angeles with just $200. He lived, music, on free food, slept on comedy club sofas, and went to auditions anywhere he could. By 1982, he was playing music at the Comedy Store, a venue once dominated by icons like Robin Williams and Richard Pryor. After seeing him one evening, Rodney Dangerfield liked him and asked him to join him on his 1982 tour. Jim, the youngest member of the group, managed to make ends meet while opening gigs in front of hundreds of people. His hunger remained, but it now had a reason. He was paid very little for his subsequent tiny roles on TV, but each one was significant. He only made $50 a week in 1983 making doodles for a program called the Sex and Violence Family Hour. He subsisted on ramen noodles and slept in a vacant flat devoid of any furnishings. He was cast in a sitcom about a cartoon company called The Duck Factory, Music, in 1984, but it was cancelled after 13 episodes. Once more, he was in debt. He still didn't give up on music. His first taste of success came in 1985 when the movie Once Bitten made $19 million on a $1.5 million budget. Although it wasn't well received by critics, he was discovered. Suddenly, people were taking notice of the rubber-faced child from Ontario. It was during that same music period that his life took another turn. A brief relationship with Mia Farrow, an arrest for marijuana possession, and an increasing reliance on cocaine to get through late-night rehearsals. He referred to the period as one of his darkest. Despite every rejection and every audition, he continued to show up. 3 times in 1980, 1983, and 1986, he tried out for Saturday Night Live music, but each time he was turned down. After a poor impersonation of Robin Williams, his final audition ended in failure. But rather than give up, he changed. He started creating bizarre, exaggerated personas that nobody else would dare try. Fire Marshal Bill, the eccentric character who would eventually characterize his breakthrough years, was one of them. He had become something new as a result of those setbacks. When Jim Carrey joined In Living Color, a Fox sketch show that did more than push boundaries, it erased them, in 1990, he was 28 years old. His intensity was unlike anyone else's from the first moment he stepped onto the stage. Around the course of 5 seasons, he drew around 120 sketches. However, one character, Fire Marshal Bill, quickly gained popularity because to his melted face, frantic gaze, and the crazy slogan, "You can call me Bill." He simultaneously made people laugh and cringe. Not only was it humorous, but the music was unforgettable. Jim's parts were the ones that people remembered the most when the show began to draw in millions. The show, which was based on the music of legendary black comedians like the Wayans brothers, featured a white comedian as its breakout star for the first time. He didn't just blend in, Carrey made an impression. But he was exerting himself too much behind the scenes. To portray Ice-T parodies or characters like the hideous female bodybuilder Vera Demo. Over the course of a week, Carrey fluctuated his weight, gaining or shedding 20 pounds. He was making fun of himself by using his body as a prop, slapping himself, bending in uncomfortable ways, and smashing into furniture. Critics began to speculate that he may win an Emmy, but his own body began to fail. He had to spend the remainder of the week in agony after twisting his ankle dancing during one sketch in 1992. He didn't stop even then. He had recently purchased his first home in Los Angeles and was earning $25,000 every episode. But in order to continue, he began using Adderall. He was being torn apart on the inside, but it kept him awake during the grueling 80-hour weeks. His marriage was failing at the same time. Melissa Walmer and him had first met on the set of The Duck Factory in 1987. Before he became famous, she saw him. However, after In Living Color gained popularity, everything changed. There was fame in the home. Strip clubs, late nights, and falsehoods. She went through with a divorce in 1995. She said that he had cheated on her with dancers and that he had changed. The complete story was revealed by music and the court records. Too much success, not enough equilibrium. His marriage collapsed when the audience laughed. Even the show's topic became entangled in more significant issues. The skits went so far over the 1992 to 1993 seasons that Fox Music became alarmed. Over 10 million people watched the Homeboys part, which made fun of gang culture, but it also sparked complaints. The creators and executives began to quarrel over what might be shown. Carrey also didn't hold back. He leaned into the mayhem, making fun of everything from religion to race and music. But in 1994, after years of conflict, he eventually resigned. Instead of burning out, music took off. Ace Ventura dropped that year, for that reason. No one anticipated humor would be irrevocably altered by a low-budget, loudmouth pet detective. The film only cost $15 million. It earned $17 million internationally and $72 million in the US alone. Additionally, nearly 40% of his lines were improvised. Carrey. He was the best, he wasn't just playing the best. Overnight, 1 million children began quoting him when he blurted out, "All righty then." After mocking him, the studios began to place contracts on music, his desk. He went from TV eccentric to box office king after only one movie. He didn't even follow the script during his audition. He recently began music by performing voices. Tony Bennett, Ray Charles. It was nonsensical on paper, yet it struck a deep chord in the room. He defeated 19 actors. After being chosen for the lead role, Sean Young clashed with Carrey and the director, leading to her dismissal. Instead, Courtney Cox played the part, music. The movie was reinventing itself around Carr's insanity by that point. He used to play odd practical jokes. He once tugged a chist's arm mid-note while walking, music, by her to see what would happen. It was preserved in the movie. Scenes requiring 20 takes or the crew's incessant laughter, music, were irrelevant. Everything was being shaped on the fly by Carrey. Ace Ventura wasn't the only thing he did. He changed into him. He colored his hair, slept in the character's residence, and stopped taking showers. The distinction between Ace and Jim quickly became hazy. The crew had to repeatedly rebuild the setup since he improvised so much when filming The Apartment Raid. The box office was shouting louder than anyone, therefore nobody wanted to control him even if they couldn't. But the price was rising. He received $350,000 for Ace Ventura. His pay increased to $7 million for Dumb and Dumber and then $20 million for The Cable Guy following its release. But he broke down more and more the more he produced. During the Dumb and Dumber promotional tour, he experienced a mental breakdown. He had delusions. Music, he admitted to using cocaine to keep himself awake. He identified as a manic-depressive clown. It was as though a mask were on his face. Another variety, not the green one. The kind of music that makes you feel pleased on the outside but breaks your heart on the inside. The goods deals were also a big hit. Ace Ventura dolls sold quickly, more than 1 million. T-shirts, toys, and lunchboxes. Ace's music face may be seen everywhere. Carrey, however, was not rejoicing. He claimed that Warner Brothers had used his visage in video games without his consent and filed a $20 million lawsuit against them in 1995. He was the world's biggest comedian. But his own smile had become uncontrollable. Carrey saw the action as personal, but it also became a landmark case for celebrity image rights. Next was When Nature, Music, Calls by Ace Ventura. He asked for $15 million plus gross points for the follow-up. The payout was among the largest in comedic history. Globally, the film earned $212 million. However, the script appalled him. Jokes about animal abuse and ugly images. On set, he attempted to modify them. Even when he argued with the writers and improvised safer phrases, some things managed to go through. The movie was criticized by activists for making fun of sacred animals. He was internally at odds with the film's transformation, but Carrey kept the chuckles coming. The Mask was a big hit in theaters that same year. Music, earning $18 million, it became the fourth highest grossing film of 1994, earning $352 million worldwide. There was more to the green mask than makeup. Industrial light and magic provided the CGI. There were more than 200 visual effects scenes. Up to 12 hours a day, Carrey wore the prosthetic. Even though it occasionally burned his skin, it was worthwhile. The movie was nominated for an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. Forrest Gump won, but Carrey had already triumphed. He helped bring swing music back to life, made Cameron Diaz famous, and once more shown his ability to handle a film with total pandemonium. Dumb and Dumber followed closely behind. Despite costing $17 million, it became a cult classic and earned, music, $270 million globally. About 30% of Lloyd's music lines were written by Carrey. We were left without work and food. The song was all improv. Music, the set was in disarray. Because the sound of the filming was too loud, one scene postponed an actual wedding. Carrey fractured his ankle trying to perform a snowboarding trick, music, himself, yet he still managed to finish the scenes, limping, bleeding, and still delivering lines. Jeff Daniels almost became stuck on a ski lift pole. All the money couldn't keep him from collapsing, but they had to pour warm water to free him. In 1994, Fox filed a $10 million lawsuit against him about living color residuals. Out of court, he reached a settlement. In that same year, he received about $20 million from the film industry. On stage, however, music, passed out at the MTV Awards. "I need a break," he muttered. He felt worn out and suspicious. The audience applauded, but he told the truth behind the scenes. He could no longer act the part. Everyone was laughing because of Jim Carrey. However, he was secretly out of breath. There was a lot of strain when Jim Carrey was filming The Boat Escape and The Truman Show. Peter Weir, the director, wasn't content until Carrey made him feel like he was about to lose it. It took 150 takes for that one stormy scene. The group created a synthetic ocean that resembled the real one, complete with a storm system. It was the size of a football field. As Carrey held onto a boat and wore a safety harness that felt like a seatbelt in a collision, water blasted into him from all directions. Music. The storm scene became so realistic at one point that he nearly drowned. Crewmen had to intervene to save him. However, it only took one shot to capture the instant Truman touches the wall and leaves the made-up world. One of the most iconic shots in film history would be that one. The film made $264 million worldwide while costing $60 million to produce. No one laughed at Carr's performance because it was so forceful. They merely observed. He wasn't merely acting in that dome. In it, he resided. Carrey was unwilling to leave the set for weeks. Like Truman, he wanted to experience what it was like to be totally isolated from the outside world. He didn't contact his relatives. He seldom ever interacted with anyone outside of the scenes. The emotional parts were more powerful because of that seclusion, but it also created tension. Carrey and Peter began bickering, with Carrey demanding control over sequences and even a $20 million prize if he won a Golden Globe. He did. Best Actor went to him. However, everything had already broken behind the scenes by the time he held the prize. Nevertheless, The Truman Show altered public perceptions of him. Not merely a humorous face anymore. He was now a serious actor who had more profound things to say about music. Carrey didn't just portray Andy Kaufman when he took on Man on the Moon, he actually became him. He shed 40 pounds. He watched Kaufman tape for hours on end till it became ingrained in him. Even off camera, he maintained his character by portraying Kaufman in meetings, rehearsals, and other situations. Danny DeVito was unable to handle it. To gather his breath, in music, he requested breaks. In one of the last moments, Carrey gave himself a saline injection to simulate the signs of cancer. He desired the agony to appear authentic. Did it? It brought in $50 million. The second Golden Globe went to Carrey. But a divorce was behind that victory. He and Lauren Holly broke up after only a year. He felt he was no longer able to relate on an emotional level. How deeply he had become ingrained in Kaufman's thoughts was eventually revealed in a documentary. It was self-destruction, not just acting. Carrey brought the Riddler to life with a lot of energy and unique props back in 1995 during Batman Forever. He created 20 unique cane designs. The film earned $336 million, making it a big smash. Carrey was breaking on the inside, though. He began using Valium to keep himself quiet as his anxiety took over. His struggle was disclosed. Tommy Lee Jones was unable to deal with his actions on site, and the two had frequent arguments. At that point, Carrey's addiction began to manifest itself through music. On film, there appeared to be games and fun, but underneath, there was anarchy. And then Liar, Liar. Carrey was able to ad-lib to about 60% of his lines, which helped it earn $300 million. Scenes in the courtroom were impromptu, vibrant, and chaotic. Carrey, however, sued Universal 3 years later, claiming that they were promised a $2 million bonus. The legal action became ugly. He claimed he was defrauded of royalties by the studio. The damage was done, but it was quietly settled. Though there was a scar behind the scenes, the film remained a popular favorite. Things become darker during The Cable Guy. Although the movie made $12 million, it was a complete disaster behind the camera. Carrey completely transformed into Chip Douglas, who tortured Matthew Brick offscreen. One session ended with both guys getting mud in their eyes after a long day of surprising sequences, and Brick once yelled, "I don't know how to react anymore." Broderick tore his cornea, music. Due to delays, he spent 14 hours in his trailer one day. The intended genre of the film was dark comedy. Instead, it turned into a tense experiment with going too far. It wasn't enjoyable when Carrey portrayed the Grinch. He spent 2.5 hours a day wearing makeup that made him feel like a corpse, despite the $345 million the movie brought in. It was difficult to breathe with the prosthesis. He was constantly in need of maintenance or had to perspire. He insisted on perfection, demanded more, and kept pressing for retakes. Carrey left the Oscar-winning cosmetics crew with months of fatigue and backache. The cost was etched in his bones, despite the enormous triumph. Tragic events occurred in 2015. Carr's intermittent lover, Irish cosmetics artist Catriona White, overdosed on drugs and died. She gave him the medication and left a note accusing him of mental abuse. Her estate filed a lawsuit, alleging that Carrey broke up with her when she was most vulnerable and gave her STDs and pills. The case rocked the business. Music: investigators discovered missing prescription bottles and texts that indicated he was aware of what was going to happen. According to his team, it was all extortion. The stains persisted even after the case was dropped in 2018. Carrey played against all he had ever done in Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. No jokes, no habits. Michel Gondry, the director, didn't even call for action. He wanted Carrey's attention to be diverted. Yes, he was. With no safety nets and 17-hour days, the $72 million movie was shot in a chaotic environment. Music. 4A. Single scene: Carrey shaved his head. He then acknowledged that the procedure made him feel down. Although the performance was unpolished, the injuries were genuine. He needed months to heal. His private life was not immune. His daughter Jane was identified as having autism in 2012. By 2018, she spoke out his harmful beliefs and separated herself from music. Jim's father, Percy, lost his job when he was a child, and Carrey frequently mentioned him. In order to make ends meet, the family cleaned industrial floors. Percy passed away in 2006. Carrey paid for the funeral with a check for $10 million. He claimed that going from barely making ends meet in a camper van, music, to being able to bury his father like a king was a full circle. Carrey returned in 2020 with Sonic the Hedgehog, which generated $319 million, despite having hinted her retirement in 2018. He was telling the truth when he joked that he returned for cash, stating, "I bought a lot of stuff." For Sonic, Music, 3, he made $30 million. The company even used actual 24-karat, music, gold ink to create his script in an attempt to entice him. He claimed he was restored by the magic. He never really stopped making music. To everyone's amazement, Dumb and Dumber was released in 2014. Despite the negative reviews, it had a $166 million profit. Carrey gave up 30 to play Lloyd once more. The movie was almost a failure. After dropping out in 2012, he returned after Jeff Daniels declared he couldn't succeed without him. In a few 3 weeks, the writing was hurried. Carrey later attacked it nevertheless, describing it as sloppy music. The production business was forced to settle for $60 million after becoming embroiled in a scandal involving stolen Malaysian cash, music. The film did, however, sell tickets. By 2022, he was once more overcome by depression. "It was like low-level despair that never went away," he added. He had been living with Prozac since the 1980s. He almost passed away from pneumonia in 2017 while working on Sonic 2. His mind froze at that instant. Since it was better to have pain than nothing, he ultimately stopped taking his medication. He began talking candidly about recovery and therapy. It reminded people he was a person, but it delayed Sonic, Music, 3. The number 23 failed in 2007 with just $37 million, but more than any movie, it tormented Carrey. He developed an obsession. He could see the number on clocks, phone numbers, and street signs. It was unshakable. In fact, he began writing about numerology. He entered therapy after the film in an attempt to distinguish fact from fantasy. He promised not to play such ominous characters ever again. He portrayed Colonel Stars in Kick-Ass 2, Music, however he stopped promoting the song following the Sandy Hook school shooting. "I couldn't support a film with so much violence," he stated. His quietness turned into the most audible declaration. The movie brought in $60 million, but Carrey's decision had a greater influence. He returned in 2024 for Sonic 3. Every morning for 3 hours, a mustache was adhered. Another $30 million agreement. He claimed to have purchased too many homes and chuckled about needing money. The director wasn't kidding when he sent a script in gold ink. It was true. Carrey acknowledged that he felt alive when he made that kind of move. It was more than money. It was enchantment. He shocked everyone in 2017 when he said, "There is no me," in a widely shared interview during Fashion Week. He wasn't attempting to be cunning. He was sincere. After years of studying Eckhart Tolle and meditation, he felt as though he was no longer a human but rather an integral part of everything. Music, he claimed that celebrity or personality did not bring peace. It was the result of giving up. Inspired by what he dubbed Christ consciousness, he began painting hundreds of canvases that same year. Music, he reminded formerly incarcerated people at Homeboy Industries in 2015 that forgiveness is the key to entering heaven. He claimed that his inspiration for his artwork came from the fact that Jesus suffered not just physically, but emotionally, and still forgave. He was no longer acting. He looked around. The total revenue from Jim Carrey's films exceeded $1 billion by 2025. Despite winning 2 Golden Globes, he never received an Oscar. His greatest year was still 1994. He once remarked, "Everyone should get rich and famous just to learn that it doesn't fix anything." In one sitting, Ace Ventura, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. But music was another place where his spirit resided. Peace was what he believed in.